I want to just kind of get your organic, because Dieter's written an article for the Merc on this,
Yeah.
Winners and losers from minicamp. But let's just go around in the room and have a little brief discussion of the good, the bad, what really stood out from minicamp. Dieter, go ahead. Why don't you start first? What jumped out to you? Because we probably didn't all see it the exact same way.
I mean, I'll give the easy one. I'm going to throw this out here. Here's the red meat. Hutch and I were both big fans of the top 2 picks the 49ers made in this draft, being Ricky Pearsall and Renardo Green, whichever one Mooney Ward wants it to be.
What's his name again?
Renardo Green.
Mooney Ward was like, didn't know if it was Renardo or Ricardo Green.
Didn't know the first
Ricardo
name
Green is such a cooler name. Regardless,
it was awesome though that he didn't know it right up. I mean, nothing. If you're Renardo Green and you think your S doesn't stink and you're rolling around and popping your jersey and I'm a Niner now, man.
Ricardo
Mooney just gave you. He doesn't even know your freaking name, bro.
Yeah. Well, we're all going to learn that name real fast because both of those guys were wildly impressive and to the point where I know it's non-padded. I know it's minicamp. I know that the minicamp started in May and early June, but I feel like we should take a victory lap, Jake, because we were on these guys from day one, that these should be the targets. We were kind of stunned that Green was available to the Niners when they took him. We were also stunned that they did the smart thing and took Pearsall at 31. But I don't believe this to be confirmation bias, even though everything I'm saying sounds like confirmation bias. I think those 2 guys were spectacular. Pearsall was sudden. You could tell when Pearsall was doing the drills with the wide receivers because Leonard Hankerson gives kind of a verbal feedback to each of the guys when they're doing their like stutter and goes and getting off the line and stuff. And it'd be like, good, good, good. And then you didn't have to watch. You would just hear, ooh, hell yeah. Every time Ricky Pearsall went, that's what Leonard Hankerson was doing, the wide receivers coach. There was just a different sound to the coaches when he was out there doing stuff. Every veteran on the team asked about him. They weren't blowing smoke up his ass. They were like, that white boy's the truth. He was the real deal. He was sudden. He was polished, and he separated like nobody's business. And I thought he looked really tough as well because he did get some good coverage thrown his way. He was oftentimes matched up against the number one, whoever that was out there, whether that be Isaac Yiadom, someone I think we'll talk about, whether that be Green, whether that, down the line, even I know Mooney Ward didn't do anything, but like they had tight coverages at times and he still caught everything. I thought Pearsall looked incredible. I had enough people tell me that he looked incredible and that I should be taking a victory lap, that I'm going to take their advice. And Hutch, you got to take a victory lap on Renardo Green because he looked the part. He looked spectacular. Yeah. He might have even been better than Pearsall.
He's awesome, man. I think Renardo Green is a guy where I'm not quite sure why people valued him so lowly. He went, I was viewing him as like a late second round guy from the start. And then it was like no one was hyping him up. A lot of these guys rise during that period and start getting mocked earlier. And it didn't seem to be the case for him. I mocked him to the 49ers.
Prospect. Like when I would talk to people in the league, some people would say he's like the truth. He should be in the first round. And other guys are like day 3. And I think it's because it wasn't a sexy tape.
I think
I think it was the penalties too. He also had 11 penalties.
Yep,
handsy.
That's fair. And he tested really well, but not like crazy off the charts. I just think he is a technician. Like the dude is smart. The dude is super physical. He's going to get penalties. I think it's interesting that he's playing slot that he's never played before, and he looks like he's played it all his life, pretty much.
He looked good.
Like he's doing it in zone, he's doing it in man, and he like had a great rep against Pearsall that last day, broke up a pass. They both gave each other, respect after the play. And it's like when you see that, Nick Sorensen was like, hell yeah, that fires you up because you watch it and you're like, these guys are both immediate pros. And there have been so many times with the 49ers, not to even get specific, but so many times where
Trey Lance.
You're like, you try and see through the mirage. You're like, is there something there?
Yeah.
And with these guys, you don't have to do it. You're just like, oh, that is an NFL player. He's ready to go. And the only problem the 49ers have is like, how do they get them both on the field year one? Like Renardo Green might end up being their fourth corner, and I think he's an immediate starting caliber corner. Pearsall, you're going to have to rotate him in. So I think they hit on those guys again way too early to confirm that, but
Yeah.
like from what
But they're
we've
playing.
seen,
The other thing too is you go, oh well, how can you really know because it's just mini camp and they're basically doing a lot of 7-on-7s. Well, I understand that there is a level above this, which is when you put on pads
Right.
and there's a physicality, and that could add some things into the question. But the further you are away from the ball, and by the way, I include quarterbacks in this to a degree, but the further you are away from the ball, the more I can glean based on what you do without pads, because the
Yep.
less your game requires pads to be successful. So it's not to say that Renardo Green, who by the way looks like he packs a punch in his college film, looks like he's a earnest and honest tackler, all these things. Like, I'm not concerned about that, but we'll see what happens when he's going up against full-grown men who run way faster than their body should allow them on an NFL practice field. We'll see what happens there. And we'll see what happens with Pearsall as well, because the one knock, and we've talked about this before, Larry, and Hutch, we've certainly brought it up more times than I care to count. Like, if you were to wonder why he wasn't considered an elite prospect or a top of the line receiver in the class of a Neighbors, or obviously Marvin Harrison Jr. is well beyond that, but like why he wasn't really viewed as a first round pick, it's because people questioned if he could get himself away from jams, get himself to the places that he wants to go, even if he got bumped a little bit. And I am of the belief that he can, but that doesn't mean that he will. That's a belief. But everything else that I believed about him has been confirmed to be true, at least in my eyes. And again, I don't want it to be confirmation bias, but when we're right, we're right.
Two interesting guys there. One, I did way too many, because I know I did at least one with each of you.
That's right.
Mock drafts leading into the draft, right? It was just, there's so many different mock draft simulators, and there's a lot of empty time in March, and you're sitting there going, all right, let's do a mock draft. And I kept doing these mock drafts. And so I was talking to a buddy of mine who scouts in the league. And I was joking with him that I've been doing these mock drafts. And he's like, oh, man, I got to see your mock drafts. He goes, send me one and I'll take a look at it. And I can tell you, I'll tell you what stands out to me. So I sent him one of the mock drafts. And it was one of the mock drafts that had the Niners taking Renardo Green in the 5th round. And he said to me, he's like, first of all, this mock draft is just, they've got Renardo Green 2 rounds too low. He's not a 5th round guy. He's going to be a 3rd round guy. And probably maybe even in the high 3rd round. So he's like, this is just off. And I go, well, that's kind of part of the reason I keep having Renardo Green mocked to the Niners, because they got him in the 5th round. So I get to the 5th round and I'm staring at this guy going, yeah, I would draft him. But realistically, he probably wasn't on the board in the 5th round for more than just a handful of teams. More teams had him higher up. So that was his first thought.